What's up everybody, I'm back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing my quick spoiler-free review for Spider-Man Homecoming. So Spider-Man Homecoming, let's break down the plot really fast. If you didn't watch the trailers, you really don't know the plot. If you did, you know most of the plot. There are some twists and turns in here that are really good, and they're really well hidden, and a lot of the trailers is like, this is Iron Man 4.0 with Spider-Man. It's not like that at all when you watch the movie, and so, you know, the movie's actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be for that reason. I love Spider-Man, so I was really happy to see a great solo-ish movie for him. I know Iron Man's in here, so it's not a solo movie, but it's close enough. When you watch the movie, you're like, yeah, Iron Man's in it, but he's not in it every scene like we thought he was going to be. It's a good Spider-Man movie. That's the point I'm trying to make. Good Spider-Man movie, go check it out. So let's get into the spoiler-free review, breaking down the plot really fast. This is all the stuff that we knew from the trailers, minus a few details in case you haven't seen the trailers. I want to save you from some spoilers that Sony decided to just throw in the trailers. So I'm going to hold off on all that. A salvage company who cleans up battles and the aftermath left behind by the Avengers. We directly see the aftermath of the original Avengers movie. They're put out of business when Tony Stark creates this thing called damage control, which is then going to go in and clean up the damage themselves, and so those guys are put out of business, turning them all to a life of crime, so that Michael Keaton's character, who didn't really have a name that stuck out to me other than Vulture, which they don't necessarily call him in the movie, Vulture, the bad guy, he is the one who's like, you know what, I'm going to Heisenberg this, I guess I got to do this for my family, I have to turn to a life of crime because I don't have a job anymore, so he turns to a life of crime, which also makes him a little more sympathetic than some Marvel villains. I don't really, I can't really be like, yeah, I totally would just go, creating weapons of mass destruction just because my family needed money. But I love the parallel here between Vulture and Tony Stark, where it's like, yeah, Tony Stark also did that, and now I'm doing it, and so why am I the bad guy all of a sudden when he wasn't? Just because he did it for the government, and it still wound up in terrorist hands. And so I love the parallel there between them, and he basically turns to a life of crime where he modifies alien tech with human technology to create advanced weaponry he sells in the black market. Years later, they do give a specific date, but it creates some continuity errors, supposedly. So I'm just going to say years later, Peter Parker is recruited by Tony Stark to join the fight in Civil War after the events of the Spider-Man story we all know and love have taken place. So what I mean by that is after Uncle Ben is shot, Peter is bit by the radioactive spider, he becomes Spider-Man, he learns how to use his powers, he builds the web fluid. Everything we've seen before, that's already happened. We don't recap hardly any of that. We do talk, there's one joke in the movie, and it's not a spoiler if I mention one joke in the movie where it's like, yeah, I was bit by a radioactive spider. It's dead now, so it's not going to bite you too, so, you're not going to get superpowers. Which also leads me to talking about how funny this movie is. It's a really funny movie. In a world where Marvel movies, in my opinion, are forced comedy, I think, a lot of the time, like Avengers movies, I'm like, oh... The Guardians movie, I really liked Guardians 2. I thought it was pretty funny, but I have no interest to watch it again. In a world where Marvel movies, in my opinion, are just not as good as they used to be, this one was a nice surprise. This one was as good as I remember them. I mean, I loved Civil War. I absolutely loved that movie. Might be my favorite MCU movie still to date, but this movie was really good too, and I don't think we've had really a great contender other than Civil War in the past few years. So, months after Civil War, Peter is still waiting for a call from Tony Stark to join the Avengers, but he never gets one, leading to him spending most of his time solving small-time crimes, like he calls it a Grand Theft bicycle, and helping some old lady. We don't know what he does with her, but he helps her and she buys him a churro and he's all happy about it. So he stumbles upon a weapons deal and tries to stop it, but is defeated by the Vulture. Spider-Man goes after the Vulture, trying to stop him to prove to Iron Man that he can be an Avenger, and he is quickly into a situation well over his head. That is the plot of Spider-Man Homecoming. Like I said, there's a lot more twists and turns in here, but I'm not going to get into them just for your guys' sake if you haven't seen the movie. So getting into the characters, what characters did I enjoy? I liked Peter Parker, Tom Holland, Spider-Man. He's my favorite Spider-Man, hands down. you know, you can be sentimental about Tobey Maguire. When I was a little kid, I never liked him. I never really enjoyed those movies like a lot of people did. I really liked Spider-Man 1 as a little kid. As I got older, I started to appreciate Spider-Man 2 for a lot of the reasons a lot of people do. But then in the MCU really took over, and I was like, you know, those Raimi movies, they're not as good as I remember them. And then Amazing Spider-Man came out, and I was like, now we're on to something. I'm liking this, because I liked that Spider-Man cartoon. I don't remember what it was called, The Ultimate Spider-Man or something like that, where Drake Bell did the voice for Spider-Man. I was like, yeah, this is good. This is Spider-Man. This is my Spider-Man. This is like what I remember him as. You know, reading some of the comics here and there as a little kid, that's like, yeah, that's what I remember. So I really liked The Amazing Spider-Man. Then The Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out, and I was like, yeah, that stinks for us, because now the franchise is ruined. And then they gave the rights back to Marvel, and I was like, oh, wow. And then Civil War came out. Initially, I was like, kid's too young. Don't like the fact that the eyes can move up and down. You know, that's Deadpool. That's like, keep it there, because this is a more realistic universe. But no, after seeing these movies, I'm like, no, I'm totally for this. This is great. I love Tom Holland's Spider-Man. He is both the best Peter Parker that I think we've ever seen, because he really captures how nerdy Peter Parker is. He really captures what it is to be a nerd nowadays. I'm a nerd nowadays, obviously, so I can relate. I'm also a nerd in high school, so I can definitely relate to, you know, you got your flashes picking on you. I know how that feels, and there's no reason for it. And I love how this movie, it's like in the previous movies, like Flash Thompson, he's been like this big, huge, buff jock bully, and he's like, oh, I hate you. That's not... I'm going to tell you something. I'm in high school. The only people who try and bully you are like the loser kids. They're like the kids who are just like there, and they're just like on the same level as you, but they're just like the mean ones for no reason. Like I see it all the time. I don't ever let it affect me, but I'm sure a lot of people do get affected by it. And you know, my heart to you, man, whoever I'm talking to, I can somewhat relate. But I love it. He's the best Peter Parker. He's a really nerdy Peter Parker. He really sells how smart Peter Parker is, which is something I don't think any of the other Spider-Mans have done, other than maybe Garfield came up with that really creative contraption in The Amazing Spider-Man, where he had the webs stringed up to the cameras in the sewer, if I remember. Something like that. When I watched that movie, I was like, dang, that's smart. And then in Amazing Spider-Man 2, he like comes up with that way to beat the electric on his web, on his, you know, shooters, because he's like, oh shoot, when these things get electrocuted, they don't work. So he comes up with some crazy way to defeat that. But this Peter Parker I find a lot smarter than that one, and I also find him to be a better Spider-Man. He's a lot more funny, he's got a lot more quips, and I really enjoy him in this movie, and I enjoy him in Civil War too, and I cannot wait to see him in all the rest of the movies he's in. Hope they don't end his story too fast and go Miles Morales route. I think it'd be cool to just have both of them simultaneously exist in the MCU. I don't think you really need to end off Peter Parker's story in order to get Miles Morales. You don't necessarily need to do that. There's been crossovers before that have worked really well, and I know Miles is from the Ultimate Universe, but you can bring him in. They don't have to like stick directly like, oh, we're going to be in one universe or the other. MCU is already all over the place, so they can do whatever they want. Number 2, my next favorite character is Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, played by Robert Downey Jr. I love Iron Man in all these movies. He's a little bit unlikable in this movie for a fair amount of time. There are some scenes where it's like, ooh, you can really like see where he's coming from. He's trying to be a father figure, and that's the great thing, is that he's just so terrible at it, and he doesn't realize he's terrible at it, and he's all at the same time just himself, where he's kind of this like smug dick. And it's cool to see just the way he interacts with Peter, and it's like you can tell he wants to be he like wants to be kind of this father figure, but at the same time he doesn't want to be this father figure, and it's a cool like dynamic he has internal, and it's also cool to see the way it plays out with Peter. But like I said, he's not totally in the movie as much as the trailers lead you to believe, which is a great thing. Iron Man himself, I feel like, is in the movie more than Tony Stark is, and you'll see what I mean by that when you watch the movie. He's not even in it that much. He's got a couple scenes here and there. So the Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, is my next favorite character. Dang, I wish this guy had a more memorable like name, because I cannot remember it, and I looked it up on IMDb and I couldn't find it, and that's, you know, that is what it is. But I liked him. He's cool. He's one of the best villains I think we've had for MCU. We don't really have a lot of good villains for MCU. We have Loki. Loki's literally the only one I can remember. Thanos, but he's not in it yet. Ego the Living Planet, but that's just because I watched Guardians 2 when it came out not that long ago. Baron Zemo I liked, and then Whiplash. Like, none of the villains are memorable for themselves. They're memorable for the movies they're in. Like, Zemo, who remembers him for being this awesome villain? Nobody. The only reason I remember him is because he's in my favorite Marvel movie. So it's something like that. Abomination I actually really liked back in the day, but nowadays we don't really have as many good villains anymore. So it's cool to see we have a good villain. We have an actual fleshed out character for a villain, and that's really interesting. We don't really have that a lot in the MCU. Glad they finally went that route and decided to give this guy a personality and a character. And it also helps that he's super menacing when he's in the suit. Like, he's really menacing. My next favorite character is Ned. He's really funny. He got the most laughs in the theater, like almost more than Spider-Man, I'd want to say, but he got one of the most laughs in the theater. He's hilarious. I love his character. He's played by Jacob Bolton, and I think, you know, Ned's great. I know a lot of people are upset. They're like, wait, this is just a ripoff of Gonk, but who cares, right? We've seen the same characters played out in the Tobey Maguire movies and the Andrew Garfield movies. We don't need them all over again. I'm glad we didn't get a Mary Jane in this movie, sort of, but I do appreciate the fact that we kind of just have these new characters for once. My next favorite's Aunt May. She's pretty funny in this movie too. It's really funny just to see the way that everyone's always hitting on her, and she's always just like kind of oblivious to it. And she's also pretty funny because she like apparently is like this rocker person. Like, she had this really like fun childhood, and then she's at the same time like, Peter, I know you're rocking out every night, like, but you need to be more safe because New York's a dangerous place. New York really is. If you really take a look at the full MCU and you're like, wow, Daredevil, all the Defenders are running around here solving all these problems, and you got like the Hand and everything crazy like that going on in those storylines. You got everything crazy going on in the MCU, like the movie storylines. Like, New York is the worst place to live in the Marvel Universe. So she's like, you need to be a little more careful. She's played by Marissa Tomei. You know, she's good in this movie. I just like to see the way people play off her. Especially Tony Stark. He's still funny about that. My next and last favorite standout character is Michelle, played by Zendaya. And she's, you know, she's okay. She didn't really get on my nerves as much as my brother, per se, but I didn't have a problem with her. I didn't think she was great. I didn't think she was like Gwen Stacy from the first Amazing Spider-Man. I thought she was really good. You know, I don't really have any good memories of Mary Jane from the old Tobey Maguire movies, but I thought she was serviceable in this movie. You know, she's good enough. You know, you had Liz Allen. She's good in this movie or whatever, but I didn't really think she was good enough to be a standout. I think Zendaya has a good future for these Spider-Man movies. The reason I put her in here is because I want to see more of her character so we can get to know her a little better, because we don't really get to spend that much time with her. Now, I already talked about the comedy in this movie. It's pretty spot on. This is one of the funnier movies from Marvel where I didn't feel like the comedy was forced, and I felt like it was good to go, and it made me laugh, and I want to see this movie again, which is always good, because usually when I see Marvel movies, again, it's like, oh, the comedy's always so cringy. It's like, ooh, you've been forcing jokes for the past hour and a half. But in this one, I feel like the jokes were natural. There were a bit like raunchy humor jokes where I was like, wow, they put that in a Marvel movie. But yeah, it's high school. If you don't, like, there's some scenes where some people are playing some games or they're like talking about some stuff, and it's like, whoa. They put that in a Marvel, like, tons of little kids are going to see this movie. But at the same time, it's like, I'm in high school. I can personally testify that's how we are. We are not the cleanest bunch. Like, we make the dumbest jokes, and we, you know, I don't play the stupid games that they play in the movie, but, like, I see it all the time in class. You know, people are like that in high school. If you have seen the movie, you probably know what I'm talking about, the gym scene and stuff like that. So, you know what I'm talking about if you've seen the movie. We're idiots in high school. That's just how we are. The music, it was not that good. Ooh, this is one of my least favorite Marvel soundtracks. I thought Civil War had a really solid soundtrack. This one, it's like, no, I'm not feeling it. I really enjoyed they brought back that old school Spider-Man, you know, Spider-Man. They brought that one back from like the way old school cartoons. They brought that into like the movie's theme, which isn't a spoiler because it's only played once. But other than that, it's like, this soundtrack is really generic, and that kind of is bumming. Action and effects, so pretty good effects. There are some scenes when Spider-Man is like way over CGI, but it's like, other than that, the effects are pretty solid in this movie, as they always are in Marvel. Great action, some of the best. There's really great POV shots where you're actually like looking through Spider-Man's perspective, and it's like, we never really see this in Marvel. We usually see like Iron Man's helmet looking in on Tony Stark's face, and it's like, we never really see what they're seeing, and so I really like seeing what Peter's seeing, because this movie really puts you in the body of Peter. You really get get in his mindset. You really know exactly where he's coming from, and I love it. Mostly just because his life is so much more interesting than any of ours, and I would just so much rather be living it because, let's face it, being Spider-Man would be awesome. And so I really like being put into like the mindset of Peter Parker. It's pretty great. So overall, I think this was a really solid movie. I'm going to get it an 8.5 out of 10. I would definitely go see it again. I'm going to buy it on Blu-ray and everything like that, as I think you guys should too. And by that I mean go see it in theaters. It's a good movie. And also, whenever my spoiler review comes out, feel free to check it out. I will be doing a spoiler review for this movie, so there you go. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you guys next time. D-Man, out.